and welcome to a new edition of Lily High on Life. And our very special guest today, and he is amazingly special, is Andrew Breckler. Andrew, welcome to Lily High on Life.
Hi Lily, it's great to be here.
Thank you. Now, Andrew has an amazing journey. He started off life in Perth, and his grandparents go back to the old country, to Russia, and we're going to hear about some of the wonderful things that he's doing as he made the transition from Perth to Melbourne. And also, he's semi-retired. I wouldn't call him retired, but what he's doing now, because he's really involved with making a difference in the world. Andrew, welcome, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days.
Lily, thanks very much. It's great to be here. So, yes, I had worked in the family business for 35 years and have now moved on to something different. And I'm doing a couple of things at the moment. At the start of COVID, I saw the opportunity to make PPE in Australia, personal protective equipment. We were importing, the country was importing tens of millions of masks and other protective equipment from places like China and other parts of the world. And it occurred to me that perhaps there would be an opportunity to bring some manufacturing back to Australia and do it here. None the least, the quality was not assured coming out of some of these countries, and there was all sorts of problems. So, and I knew that if we set up, and my background in footwear, retail, wholesale manufacturing, put me in good stead to understand the manufacturing process. So I got together with a good friend, and we set up Aspen Medical Manufacturing, which specialises in making masks and other PPE type products, and that's primarily what I'm doing.
3-ply masks?
We do what 3-ply masks, which is what commonly known as surgical masks, those flat ones with the ear loops. But we also make the high quality medical grade N95s. In Australia they're known as P2s. So primarily our market is hospital type groups, and although with COVID obviously the general public has been buying them as well. But the main thing was, how could we bring manufacturing back to Australia? How could this was an opportunity to support local industry.
Were you able to compete in terms of pricing?
So it turns out that the actual final cost of a mask doesn't involve a lot of labour. So you can manufacture in Australia pretty much anything, but if there's a high labour content, you will have to compete with the low-cost countries like China and India and the like, and that's when it becomes difficult.
And is it branded Aspen Medical masks?
Yes, yeah, they're highly regarded in the marketplace. And but when we set up originally, COVID was always going to be. We realised that was not going to be forever, and so the business is essentially set up for medical, hospital type groups. So when COVID drops off, we'll continue to supply the Australian medical.
Made in Australia.
Made in Australia. The raw materials are largely Australian made. What we can't get in Australia, we have to import, obviously. But all the testing is done in Australian laboratories. They're top quality.
And it's your customers, is it retail or government or a bit of both?
A little bit of everything. So clearly the general public, because of COVID, have been interested. So we've had a market there that will dwindle over the forthcoming months as COVID sort of dissipates a bit. But we've been supplying schools, we've been supplying hospitals, we've supplied the national.
And you're still
medical
working fully at full capacity, or?
Yes. Yeah, the factory's working 3 shifts a day, 5 days a week. right at the very start, we were actually going 7 days a week, but we don't need to do that anymore. We've changed the mix a bit, the high quality N95 style mask.
I had my own little foray before you started into PPE, before you started manufacturing in Australia, and it was really interesting in so many respects, dealing with government, dealing with so many other things.
It's manufacturing in Australia is not easy, but the benefit that we have in this country is we have super smart people. The education, you can really get great quality employees and have a nice sort of environment, and there is people, our customers would prefer Australian made, so long as the price is within coolie. It's got to be, it can't be way over the top, but if you're relatively competitive, people will go Australian every time.
And have you looked at exporting as well?
So we do. So as part of our commitment to community, we've been supplying the Pacific Islands, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and that's more a service to community side of things that we're doing, and we've been working with the local commissions to get. We've been flying product into Fiji, for example, and the Fiji High Commission has paid for the flights, but we've provided the goods. So it's we're a big country, and you do need to help out in these smaller areas. So we also have through Aspen Medical, my partner Glenn Keys, who runs Aspen Medical, the global health network. He's got some great contacts internationally, and so we've leveraged off that, and we're supplying in other countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and the United States.
Was Glenn a friend, a long-time friend, or a business associate, or?
Both, but he's been a long-time friend before we were business associates. So we've known it. Glenn's actually lives in Canberra, but travels a lot, and we catch up a lot. We've been good mates for near on 20 years.
I love those old friendships.
Yeah.
Have you guys? So are you involved in any of Aspen Medical, or just Aspen Medical manufacturing?
So that's a great question. Officially, no. I sort of help Glenn. We bounce ideas off each other. But no, Aspen Medical is a partnership with Glenn and myself. Aspen Medical Manufacturing, rather, is a partnership, and basically we will do all the manufacturing.
So the reason I asked the question is because I had a little look at their website, and it blew my mind. I lived in America. I was involved in some pretty amazing companies and areas and stuff like that, but Aspen Medical really blew my mind. I think it's aspenmedical.com or
That's
something.
Right. They're a global health network, started in Australia. Head office is in Canberra. Glenn he's an AO. He's an absolute gentleman, and he's a relatively under the radar sort of guy. Just does good in the community, and his business is enormous. So for me to be able to work with him was an absolute bonus.
Yeah.
And we bounce things off each other. And
so one
terrific.
of the things that, people who've listened know that I lived in America for 26 years. And one of the wonderful things about coming back to Australia is that a lot of my friends have done the most amazing global things, business and otherwise, from Australia. They never had to move, they never had to live anywhere else, but they've created these businesses. And when I say I was blown away by Aspen Medical, it's the enormity and scope, because they have hospital ships, they work with governments,
yes.
They work. I mean, it's worth checking out their website. They only started in 2003.
That's about right. They are an incredible organisation, and aeromedical evacuation, oil and gas. They work in places that other people just don't go. So, for example, the Australian government called on Aspen for the Australian response to Ebola. And it was actually Aspen that led the team of Americans and British, all led by the Aspen team, to deal with Ebola in Africa. And that was the Australian contribution. And Aspen does that. They build mobile hospitals. It's a huge organisation, and for myself to be involved, even in a small capacity, has been terrific.
So that was my next question. What is it like to be involved with an organisation that really does make such a huge difference around the world? And from what you were saying, sorry, I'm just going to stretch it a bit, but it sounds like Glenn, as you were saying, is a humble guy, is a good guy.
Yeah.
And I got that from you from our first conversation on the phone. I thought, my God, this guy's a real mensch. I like him and I haven't met him yet. So it's that kind of Menschlichkeit, that kind of... What's it like knowing the real difference that you're making to the world?
Yeah, look, Lily, I'll tell you something. The biggest thing that I would say that I have always tried to do in the world is, first of all, raise lovely children, grounded children.
How old are your kids now?
So my eldest, Kate, is getting married in January. She's 28.
Muzzle top, muzzle top.
Thank you very much. And she's marrying a lovely Jewish boy, Noah Green. So that's very exciting for all of us. And I have twins, a boy and a girl, Lauren and James, and they're 25. And I can tell you my mission in life was to try to set an example for them. And I'll just touch on why. And before I move off, I'll also have to say my wife is my rock. So that's been terrific.
How old were you when you met and married?
I met Lisa in Melbourne when I was 26. I'd moved from Perth to Melbourne, and that's another story we might touch on. But
definitely going there.
Yep.
But
and she'd come from New Zealand, so I met her. So we were both relatively new to Melbourne. I met her here. We got married. Had Kate when I turned 30, and I think the thing was, from my personal background, my father died when I was 18. He was only 46, and he was my hero. And even at 18, I look back all those years, and he was always my inspiration, and he was a remarkable man. And I always thought, it was always a challenge for me in my mind that I had to live up to his expectations, and that was what I set myself that. And he was a doer. He was a humble man. He was very successful, but he was a doer in the community, and not just the Jewish community, which was in itself fantastic, but the wider community. And I always felt that's something that I want to be able to contribute, and I wanted to impart that to my kids as well. Excuse me. And so that was my mission in life, and I think we're heading in the right direction.
So you always knew that you were going to get married and have kids. And when you met Lisa, how many dates before you realised this was the one?
One.
Yeah. I've always believed that. I'm still looking for my one. I haven't been married, but I've believed you'll know.
I think you do. I think you do. It was that was that sort of magic, and we went on a few dates, and but I knew. I'm not sure if she'd say the same. But
I won't ask.
No, she's not here, so I'll just say yeah. She said the same.
Andrew, that was at 18, which is quite young to lose your dad. How did that change your world, not just your life?
It was shocking, and I think it's impacted me my entire life. And there comes a point where you have to sort of say, okay, get up, move on, and make the best of everything. I mean, I was actually in Israel at the time, and I was hiking in the desert. There was no mobile phones, of course, And my auntie lived in Israel, Dad's sister, and they had to get in the car and come and find me. I was on a tour, and they had to come and find me, in the desert, in the Negev somewhere, and to tell me the sad, tragic news. Anyway, I came back to Australia.
Was it illness or an accident?
He had a massive heart attack and died pretty instantly.
Such a young age.
Yeah, very young, and it was totally unexpected. He was, so a shock to everyone. And he was quite involved in the Jewish community with every organisation. He was, it was terrible. But so I was just at university. I was doing commerce at uni at the time, and all I wanted to do was finish as quickly as I could and get into business. I always knew what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to be in the family business. I was blessed with a wonderful childhood, and I knew from the age of 10
that you wanted
to
do that.
Be in the shoe business.
Andrew, if you don't mind, before we move away from
Yes.
that, because I just want to ask you, because not a lot of people understand or know, as I'm sure you had no idea, how to deal with the news that your father had died, especially when you're so far away. Would you mind just sharing with us a little bit about what that waiting to even get on the plane and then flying back to Melbourne was like for you?
My best friend, Paul Rater, who lives in Melbourne, was with me in the desert. When you hear the news, I wasn't sure the first time they told me whether they talking about my grandfather or my father. So it was just all very hard as a young boy to take in, because you're talking about not only your dad, but he was your hero, he was everything. The world at that time revolved around him. He was such a larger-than-life character. So, I came back. There was no choice. I had no choice but to step up. We had this family business that Dad was the centre of. My two brothers and myself, we all had to
So
step
you
up.
said those first 7 days of Shiva are really brilliant because
Yes.
they make you focus.
I've spoken about this on a number of occasions to different people. Every religion has their version of Shiva, whether it's a wake, whether it's whatever it is. The actual grieving process is so important to go through. It was difficult for me because I missed my dad's funeral, because by the time they found me and the time I got on a plane and came back, it took me 3 or 4 days before I actually got back to Australia. So they had the funeral and I wasn't there, and that took quite a while to come to grips with. But then I had to move on. My mum was only 42, and she needed support, and we had to, we couldn't be a burden on her, or that's what my brothers and I felt. So we all had to sort of step up and move on. And
so after you'd had a chance to process it a little bit, so after 6 months or 12 months, it doesn't get easier.
no.
But how do you keep getting up every day and doing what you know you've got to do?
I think you look, at some point in time, everybody goes through some sort of tragedy. I think and even today, when I think about my dad, what happens is over the years, when you look back and you think about your dad, you only remember good times. And you look back with an incredible fondness. You're sad because he's not around, but you look back with fondness, from my point of view, I look at it and I try to take as much out of it as all.
And remember the good times so that you feel better.
I only remember the good times.
And at the time when you came back, did both your brothers, were they handling it the same way, or did they have different reactions?
I think, we were very close. We are very close. And Mum, it felt like family, we all supported each other. And we were so busy as well. We all had many things that we were involved in, whether it was sport, uni, the business, mum, we were busy, so there wasn't time to wallow.
You just forced yourself to go on.
Yeah.
And when your kids were born, I mean, that's a real time.
That's a very special time, and they were such a joy. We had, of course, Kate, our oldest, was our first, and when she came along, it was changes your life. I won't say for the better. It's but just different and wonderful. And then, of course, we were blessed with twins, which was totally unexpected. And surprisingly, my younger brother Peter, he also has twins. And all
around
the kids,
the same time.
Peter's twins, Molly and Joel, are about 8 months older than our twins, and they're absolutely best of friends, which is fantastic. So it's really nice how well they all get on, and it's a lovely family relationship. And of course, Peter also moved over from Perth to Melbourne, so we're very close. My other brother Danny, he and his family still live in Perth, and so does my mum. And of course, during COVID, it's been a bit tough to catch up with each other for the last couple of years, but we're a very close family. And
thank God for FaceTime and all this other technology.
Absolutely.
And so so the way, because there are ups and downs in everybody's life all the time, and you're obviously focused on the blessings, which is really the best way to go through life, because it's your attitude more than anything else is what really makes your life better or worse. You decide what you're going to focus on.
Exactly. I think you can choose to wake up and say, today I'm going to do something positive, I'm going to make a difference, and try and make the most of the day, or you can look back at your woes and do the opposite. And that has never been my way. I've always tried to, no matter what, I've always tried to say, what can we do today? What's the
and
positive?
What makes it special? So from the age of 10, you knew that you were going to go into the family business. Just describe a little bit of the background, how your grandparents came over from Russia and how they started the business.
Look at it's a great story, and there've been a couple of books written about it. Maybe just my family's read them, but my great grandfather left Russia in the late 1800s and met my great grandmother. Her name was Fanny Maisel. He met her in Perth. They got married. He was a bootmaker and a saddlery guy, so he worked with leather. He set up a little leather shop and boot repair shop, and they had 4 children. And unfortunately, he died young, and it left Fanny with 4 mouths to feed, and she didn't know anything about a boot repairing or saddles or leather. And she had this little shop in Fremantle, and she converted it into a shoe shop, and which was unusual. I mean, I don't think women voted in those days, let alone ran businesses. She was quite a clever, strong lady. Turned this shop into what was then called Dainty Walk, and we've got some wonderful pictures of the shop and
gorgeous.
The shoes, the boots, they were fantastic, and she turned it into, she had great foresight. She turned it into a wonderful business, and her family, her kids, particularly the 2 boys, came into the business and grew it and bought properties along the way, and it was a very solid business when my father finally took the reins, and Dad was a dynamo in the business. And when he passed away, and the 3 boys effectively, with other family members, took on the management of the business. It was a terrific business. It was Perth based. There were very few other footwear operators in Perth, so we were able to make mistakes in business, and we made plenty. But none of our competitors were around to sort of hammer us to the wall. You know, we were free to make mistakes.
Can you think of some of those mistakes just because people think you've got to be perfect? People think you can never make any mistakes. Yeah. Can you?
We made lots of mistakes, but you know, we bought the wrong shoes. We opened up in locations that were no good. You know, those sorts of everyday business decisions. I remember we once bought some shoes from India. Bought a container of shoes, and when it arrived, the container was empty. It was you know, the bloke on the dock in India it was paid more than we were paying him, obviously.
And how did you deal with that together or individually?
I think it wasn't. None of it was terminal. It was those sort of business mistakes that you learn from, and you chalk it up as good business learnings. And you know, they're the sort of things you can't teach. That you can listen and everything, but you'll make them. And I think it's important people understand making a mistake is not a bad thing necessarily. And in Australia, sometimes Australians have an attitude. You know, we've got this sort of approach. A lot of people take this approach that if you fail, even if you go bankrupt, that it's a disaster and you're tainted with this brush. Whereas you know, take Israel for example. They don't reckon you've succeeded until you've gone bankrupt a few times. You know, it's really a rite of passage. And if you're not trying these things, you know, and on the edge, and even some of the absolute well-known, you know, the Richard Branson story with Virgin and everything. I mean, he almost went broke so many times. I think it's a learning curve, and work hard, take risks. And I think if you've got a bit of luck on your side, you'll do all right. And we certainly worked hard. It was a passion. We loved it, and I love it.
Do you, in any way, shape, or form, even identify with a lot of people who, when they make a mistake, they can't get it out of their mind? When they go to sleep, they think about it. It absolutely dogs them. Has that ever happened with anything, or that's just not who you are?
It's not me. It's not me. It's never been me, and I'm sort of grateful.
So it's just not me. Stop it. If you're one of these people.
And I would tell your listeners the same thing. It's there's no point in carrying baggage. Move on, recognise it in the moment, deal with it, and then tomorrow's another day.
And then you also went through a stage where you really had to change the business because the model itself was not working as, I guess, more competitors came into the market. Absolutely.
We were blessed with the remoteness of Western Australia, and then as the world shrank and our competitors started coming, we realised that if we just sat, our market would be eroded, and so we made the decision to expand ourselves, which was basically the catalyst for me moving to the eastern states. I came over to set up a business on the East Coast, and the birds are tweeting in the background. So it's all right. I moved to Melbourne we bought a couple of shoe businesses that were available, and I came over to Melbourne to integrate them into our family business. Of course, there wasn't all the technology and the like in those days, so it was really starting from scratch over here. But we obviously had a lot of background knowledge on what to do, and they were fun times.
So that original decision to expand into other states, was that a difficult decision, or just something somebody brought it up and it made sense?
It was necessity. We always used to sit down, we looked at the long-term future of the business, a wonderful business. And we looked and we said, if we don't pivot, it won't be a wonderful business. We had to expand. And there's an old saying, I don't know how much it applies today, but in those days, grow or die was a business sort of mantra. And we sort of felt that was definitely applicable to us. And so the Betts shoe business expanded into the eastern states, and today it represents 85% of the actual business is up the East Coast,
Gosh.
which represents the population. So
Was it when I use terms like easy, there's a lot involved, but to actually bring on more stores, because that is not just a business decision, but with in terms of stock and everything, but then you've also got locations and workers and
the market was slightly different as well. Melbourne's a little bit more sophisticated than Perth. Perth and Queensland, for example, a bit more laid back, a bit more summery conditions. Melbourne was much more formal and sophisticated type.
So different styles.
There was different styles, and also in Perth, I'd pick up the phone if I wanted something done. Albeit I was a relatively young man, I'd pick up the phone. It's Andrew from Betts. And people go, oh yes, no problems, this, that and the other. Things would happen. I got to Melbourne, the first time I picked up the phone to talk to someone, I said, it's Andrew from Betts. And they said, oh, what are you, from the TAB? We were unknown, so nobody was doing us any favours. And also, I think there was a certain confidence that I had that coming over that was, I thought it would be a lot easier than what it was. I had this unwarranted confidence. And when I got here, what I thought would take a year to do, to integrate this business that we'd brought into our business, took a lot longer. And it was a lot harder. And guess what? Our competitors weren't just lying down either. They were going hammer and tong at us. They were full bore. And I thought I would be here for a year. And then I'd go back to Perth, setting this up. And so two things happened. One is it wasn't so easy. It was a challenge. The other thing was I met Lisa. And I suppose the third thing was I actually started loving working and growing what was a fledgling business on the East Coast. So my decision not to go back to Perth basically was threefold. So, because I know Lisa will be listening to this, I will say it was mainly because of Lisa.
You are a smart husband. And let me tell you, when I came back to Australia, one of the wonderful things was that in the US, a majority of my friends had been divorced and were on their second or third divorces. My Australian friends are still not only married, but now that the kids have left, happier than ever together.
Fantastic. So fantastic. Well, I'm hoping that'll be us. So it is so far. We still enjoy each other's company a lot and love it. So.
And that's the most important thing in being happy, to have somebody that you is always there for you. It's not a relationship isn't 50-50, it's 100-100.
Well, I think I said earlier, Lisa's my rock. So
yeah.
And we're blessed with a lovely family, and her extended family is just really, we love them very much and get on, and it's we have our moments, but it's
absolutely.
That's terrific.
So let me just go back for a minute. Was your confidence undermined, or what did it do to you when it was harder?
Yeah, great question, Lily. I'm not undermined. I think I suppose I don't want to use the word that I was arrogant, but I had this air of confidence that got knocked around a bit, and that just was a fantastic challenge. I look back now and I think, oh, how good was that? It wasn't so easy. You actually had to work hard. And I think the thing that I learned the most there was that the people that I worked with had an amazing talent that I was fortunate enough to allow them to flourish. I encouraged them, and there's so many things came out that they were able to do that I'd never dreamed of, that was all beneficial. And so working with good people, and that's, I was lucky enough, we got good people around us.
And the truth of that is that, being cocky and being overconfident and all of that, you obviously had a very good sense of self and who you were, and a good base, because you didn't feel that you lost anything when you allowed other people to help and guide you. You didn't feel it undermined you as a person.
I think it's a good personal trait, and I think it's a good business trait. If you can have an environment where people feel confident contributing, and they're not being worried. They're not worried about blowback or being laughed at.
Or your ego.
The egos is not good for business.
Yes.
And I dare say for life either. So I've tried to avoid that. And if I ever find that I'm getting a little bit above myself, I've got 3 children who bring me right back into line very quickly. So
and I love that about Australia. For some stupid reason, I decided to change the spelling of my name from Lily to Lili. Well, once I came back for a visit to Melbourne just after I'd done this, I got such hell from my friends. They started calling me Lili and like really giving it to me. But then you did something even more pushing of the envelope. You completely changed the business to vertically integrating, which means you were doing your own designing and manufacturing.
Yes, we had that was a family decision that was fantastic. It was right out there at the time. Not many people were doing that. We set up manufacturing. We became vertical. And that was a new process for us. We also went into wholesaling. So we were designing footwear and selling it all over the world. The people all over the world didn't necessarily recognise the name Betts and weren't that interested in that, but they liked the footwear. And so we were able to sell all over the world and still doing that. And that's been terrific.
What was the reasoning or thinking behind it? Because it is a big step.
I think I think it was a natural progression. You had control, you had timelines, you could design, and we had some really talented people in the business and encouraged designs, and when you do this, you never know whether it's going to be accepted. And in fashion retail, you're typically only as good as your last range. And so we had some great people, and we wanted to have a go at this and see how we would go. And in the end, a lot of our competitors followed suit.
Were there risks when you tried to take it on?
Yeah. We ended up, as I say, we didn't get it all right on day one, but ultimately you become pretty talented at it and good, and you cut out a lot of costs, a lot of middleman costs that get cut out, and therefore you can continue to offer your product at a really competitive price, and it's your product.
Yeah.
It's so there's a lot of joy in being able to do that and watching what you've designed sell
and learning how to work
accepted.
with China.
Yeah, well, working with China is not as easy today as what it was.
Are you still working with China?
We still do a bit in China, but we're much more diversified in what we do.
And where you do it.
And I think that's a security issue as much as the Chinese have got fantastic quality, and we're very good at watching the quality of things. But I think just it makes sense to diversify as much as possible.
Well, my family was in the sheepskin shoe business, so moccasins, Ugg boots, first ones to sell to Target and Kmart and all of those places. So your stories of having people we manufactured here, but your stories of having people sleeping in the factories in China were more appreciated.
Well, in fact, that was more... after I morphed, as we've mentioned, I went into the PPE manufacturing business, and that was more with that. During COVID, getting material in the world was very difficult, and it was very expensive. Those 3-ply masks that you refer to, that middle layer, is it's known as melt blown, and it's a very technical piece of material that filters out all the bacteria, or virus, I should say. And that getting that material, good quality material, was not easy. And yes, I did indeed. We had our people on the ground, actually sleeping with the production to make sure no one nicked it.
Well, my dad was actually born in China, so he spoke and read and wrote because he went to university in Harbin. And so I did 3 or 4 trips to China with him, and he looks European, and it was just amazing because he understood everything that was being said.
It could be quite handy while you're negotiating, particularly if who you're talking to don't know that you speak. That's a terrific story. It takes a long time working up there to build trust, and I think my background in working in the footwear industry and dealing in China put us in good stead for when we were sourcing material for our masks. Now a lot of what we are manufacturing, we're actually using Australian-made material, but you can't get it all here. So I still have to look outside of Australia. And we're working with people now that are setting up some of the materials that we use that aren't available in Australia. Within about 18 months, they will be. Yeah. So, there will come a time when PPE is entirely made in Australia.
Yeah, and there's so much other PPE as well that needs to be made.
There's gowns, there's booties, there's hats.
Everything. Andrew, I want to ask you, because I know that giving back is very important to you into other communities. Your main project sounds like it's this project that helps intellectually disabled with housing.
So I'm a director of Project Independence. And what we do is we find housing for the cohort of people with ID, intellectual disability. They have the lowest level of home ownership in the country, and when my journey came across, you meet people who, let's say, a parent has a child with an ID, and they want to know what's going to happen to my child when I die. And when you realise, and you're talking to these kids, some of the experiences, some of these kids are living in...
Oh, sorry about that. How do I even...
Yeah, I think you're going to have to wait for that.
Okay.
So what I was saying is that some of these kids are living in nursing homes, in the worst case example. I mean, you've got young children in nursing homes, they're in state housing, and most of these kids are... and I shouldn't just say kids, it's not just kids, but most of these people just absolutely have normal hopes and dreams that
you're talking about late teens or early 20s or even 30s.
And older, but living in state housing where all they need is a little bit of support, which they don't have. They're surrounded by noise and it's difficult. And so what we set up was a mechanism where we're building housing for these people it's a pathway to home ownership. So rather than paying a rent, they pay a mortgage. It all comes out of their disability support pension, and we're building these. We've just purchased a property, 13 units in Grange Road in Glenhuntly, and I'm quite passionate, and we have 200 people that have registered interest.
Wow.
We will have 13 potential residents, but the demand is enormous.
So is it just providing the housing, or is it also continuing the relationship when they're in the housing?
I think that's a great question. I'm sorry I cut you off there, but yes, that's exactly it. It's the residents are learning the skills that they may not get if they're living at home or whatever. We have a carer in there that's instrumental to the program, that can help along the way. They're interacting with other people, and these homes that we build, we don't have a big sign out the front saying, Project Independence. We're trying to make it integrate with the local community. So you walk past, you wouldn't know. And that's you don't have a big sign on your house saying, you live here or whatever, and why should they? So that's what we're trying to do, and it's quite a unique model because it is based on home ownership. And if the resident chooses to stay, that's fine. If they want to change the curtains, that's fine. And if they want to leave when they sell, they keep the capital gains, and that could go towards a future home or whatever. But it's really sad that there's such a demand, and I know there's a lot of great charities out there trying to address in different ways this very issue. And so, I'm passionate about Project Independence, and we're on a journey.
Did that come through a personal contact, or you just heard about the project?
Yes. No. We have. So my interest came about is through knowing people, friends that have people in this.
Yes, because there are quite a few, but they're not spoken about, which is why this is also interesting.
I will say within the Jewish communities, there's some amazing work. People like Flying Fox, Access. There's some wonderful things that the Jewish
really
community
are happening.
does, and that's fantastic.
Andrew, we've run out of time. I could talk to you for at least another hour. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and this huge message that's coming out of this is just always look on the bright side of life. There's always things that you could look at that bring you down, but there's always so much more, and it's getting used to looking for the things that make you happy.
Embrace the challenge.
Embrace.
It's a great mantra.
Yep. The happier you are, the happier you are, the happier you are.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
My